Well, it's really ironic. Here we are, both lovers of technology, and we've had, some insane amount of time to try to simply do a communication. I heard Ray Kurzweil, who we know is a pretty smart dude.
Mm.
One of the very first times I ever heard him, he was out at Alcor in a very small grouping of us, about 30 or 40 of us in a small room, and we were all excited about Ray Kurzweil. The bottom line is he could not get his laptop to work. He could not make the presentation work. So we're all it's not just him. All these guys are a bunch of software engineers, and for like 25 or 30 minutes, we're all sitting around trying to make this technology work. That's going to tell us how great technology is going to be. It was just ironic and huge. It's quite frankly hugely embarrassing. You ever been in meetings where the tech doesn't work and everyone kind of looks around and say, what the hell is going on here? But it was especially ironic because because Ray Kurzweil is like the god of transhumanism and the god of technology going to improve our lives, and obviously it does. Here we are communicating across thousands of miles seamlessly, and today I communicated thousands across the Atlantic Ocean seamlessly, and I'll continue
So
to
did I.
communicate elsewhere.
I talked to a guy named Florian Marcus in Estonia. He's an emissary for e-governance and blockchain voting. They have a very sophisticated blockchain voting system, and we're doing an interview on Estonian time. I've been kind of all over the time zones here, so our party is kind of thanks to the Futurist New Deal, maybe moving close to kind of formalizing dealings with a very technocratic, a modern technocratic country. So
yeah, I actually heard that Estonia is doing some really creative things, which is kind of counterintuitive. It seems like they have a lot to do with the blockchain. They're doing, you can have a virtual company that's based there. I mean,
yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about it, but it sounded like they really wanted to do a leapfrog into the new latest and greatest technologies. It would be obviously good. Could you tell me a little about how blockchain voting works? What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah. So about 40% of total voters. It's not compulsory. They have other choices. People can use the more familiar voting machines and provisional ballots and things of that kind. But about 40% of Estonians are using this blockchain system, and it has a two-factor authentication kind of thing. You vote from a cell phone, and then rather people can vote from their cell phone, but if they vote from their desktop, they can confirm it with their cell phone, which makes it extremely hard for anyone to hack into this system and manipulate votes. It's one of the bigger problems in the United States. It is concerns about black hat hackers affecting the system, but it's also voter suppression and disillusionment and a whole similar set of concerns. Some people in politics say, we don't see this as a problem, but consistently in midterm elections, 25 and 30% of people are voting. Something like iVoting allows people not to have to take a day or off of work or make all kinds of arrangements or additional monetary considerations, and it's all ultimately it's managed at a cost of pennies on the dollar compared to installing and updating all of this physical infrastructure or all of this personnel in these locales. So it's a little bit, people are concerned about security in the wake of events in recent elections and talking about paper ballots, and it's a little bit like a car accident in 1920. And then people saying that everybody's going to keep riding horses, which are just as dangerous. There's a lot of ways that we can be embracing e-government and these kind of e-service portals in government besides iVoting. Like you mentioned, Estonia is really good about that, and the reason that they're really good about that is they didn't really have political or business interests stymieing that in the way that other Western countries will tend to have. So they're better able to serve the people, and that does allow for growth in other markets. It allows for just the better use of advanced technology, which is the thing that we all want. So it's pretty astonishing what they've accomplished. They've had this for 14 years. Some decentralized e-voting system that's seen some improvements over the years, but now they do have a full blockchain voting system, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, intriguing. New things emerging all the time. So can we talk a bit about Cryonics and Cryonics funding and how that relates to the embrace of new technology?
Yes. And we are here. This is a Futurist New Deal, and I'm Johan Ben Zion, and I'm here with Rudi Hoffman, and we're talking about his book, The Affordable Immortal. And this book is a great resource, and Rudi himself is a great facilitator for people in the life extension community. Thank you for what you've done, sir. There's nothing short of heroic actions in helping people make arrangements for life extension. In the one area where we're able to do this the most today, which is Cryonics, and your book is the Affordable Immortal. It's helping people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I will go ahead. I don't know. I know they're mostly audible, but I'll go ahead and hold up the video just as there's a hard physical copy of the book. Yeah, the subtitle it's the Affordable Immortal. The Affordable Immortal. Maybe you can beat death and taxes, which is obviously a reference to the Ben Franklin quote. There's one thing in certain in life, death and taxes. And I start with that quote, but then a second kind of interesting Ben Franklin quote, and I'll read it here because it's so on point. In the 1773 letter, Ben Franklin says, "I wish it were possible from this instance to invent a method of embalming drowned persons in such a manner that they may be recalled to life at any period, however distant, for having a very ardent desire to see and observe the state of America 100 years hence. I should prefer to any ordinary death the being immersed in a cask of Madeira wine with a few friends till that time, to be then recalled to life by the solar warmth of my dear country." So he was way too early, obviously, but he would have been a cryonicist if he'd have had the opportunity. And instead of Madeira wine, we have liquid nitrogen, which has a much better chance to preserve people without damage.
A little better preserving tissue for those neuronal structures.
Yeah, exactly. And you probably know that the current state of the art actually is not freezing, but a thing we call vitrification.
Vitrification, yes.
And what that, of course, means is that there is virtually no actual damage for the vitrified tissue compared to the substantial amount of damage caused to biological tissue if it's frozen. Of course, you and I are made up of 70 or 80% water, and when water freezes, that does bad things. And we know that freezing damage makes biological tissue, non-viable. So the mechanisms that we have currently are basically similar to the mechanisms that bring back zygotes and cells and other medicinal medical grade biological tissue from cryonic temperature. But of course, we can't yet bring back a full human being or even a full rat at this point in time.
Yes. And this vitrification, so this technology has evolved because it's been around for 6 decades nearly, going back quite some years. And and it's been used by organizations like Alcor for some decades also. But the technology itself is constantly evolving as we're making these new breakthroughs. This vitrification process, it's a little more like the process of turning something into glass, and
Yeah,
that allows yes,
great
and that
analogy.
allows
Yes.
yeah, and that allows these cells to be preserved in a far truer form than freezing something, and so that has great benefits to life extensionists. And your book says that the choice that is most affordable to people is to leverage this service through life insurance. And that's precisely what you've done for an awful lot of your very satisfied clients. Tell us a little bit about working with those folks.
Yes, thank you, Ben. It's been my privilege and honor over the last 25 years
Mm,
to write the life insurance, or in some case annuity funding, for roughly 60+% of the people who are signed up for Cryonics in the entire world. Which is the number of people that have embraced Cryonics and actually taken action and have a bracelet on their wrist is under 5,000.
mm,
Uh, so um, and the actual of those, the ones that have their full complete funding in place is even lower. So we have something like between 1,000 and 1,500 Cryonics clients. Most of those are have an extra life insurance policy that funds the cost of cryogenic suspension immediately upon pronouncement of what we call legal death, which, as you probably know, is a point at which some medical professional says, yes, this guy is officially dead.
mm,
But of course, that does not mean he's
mm,
necessarily biological dead. People have been pronounced, dead and then come back.
mm,
And if you were 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, if your heart stopped, they thought you were dead permanently. But now, of course, many people, literally thousands of folks, have been walking around who had CPR done. So what does
mm,
that mean? It means they weren't really, really dead. So we think cryonics is not freezing dead people. It's not freezing corpses. It's two ways. One, we're not freezing them. Two, they're not really corpses. They're basically, this is a advanced form of emergency medicine.
mm,
Uh, at the same time, from a legal standpoint, there is a thing that is a point of legal death. What that enables us to do, and your listeners who love technology will love this. This is a confluence of two technologies. One is a rather amazing thing called life insurance. And
mm,
life insurance is a technology that enables us to leverage a tiny metal amount of money, $50 a month or $80 a month or $25 a month, into a huge lump sum that is created when an event occurs, in this case, a event of a legal pronouncement of death.
mm,
So if I happen to keel over at this moment while we're in this podcast, there's several companies that would deliver a total of $3 million, which is a pretty big number,
mm,
to my Cryonics organizations and to my wife and doggies, and also
mm,
to my Cryonics Trust.
mm,
So the leverage of life insurance is one piece of this technology, and the other thing is that cryonics is legitimate. It's not ready for prime time, in that we can prove by bringing human beings and adults and cats and rats and elephants back from cryonic temperature yet. We can have very clear evidence that the structure is preserved with a high degree of fidelity.
mm,
And we have a lot of proof of concept that but the small single-celled organisms and even very small animals like tardigrades can be frozen. Interestingly enough, nematode worms were frozen, and not only frozen all the time and come back and all the way down to liquid nitrogen temperature, minus 196 degrees Celsius.
mm,
They not only come back, but they've actually remembered their earlier training. So one of the questions that is foundational to cryonics working is does the neuronal path structure save to the point where people remember, where your brain path can remember who you are and and so we have pretty good reason to believe that is the case.
mm. Yes, and so people who already have a life insurance policy in place should definitely consider reaching out to Rudi and certainly picking up the Affordable Immortal, the book that we just looked at, and these is available on Amazon, is available through other things. We're going to be linking to those streams at the end of this podcast, and so at the bottom of this in the comments here. So people should be looking at that, and I know a few people who are your clients who've made these arrangements on your advice and assistance, and they are very pleased with that choice. And as you said, there's always room for improvement. This technology has improved, and ultimately we will see, I think, in short order. A lot of my friends and a lot of these listeners are people who are respecting ideas in the vein of Moore's law, acceleration of technology. Some of these people are outright techno-singularitarians, and so there's an idea of history collapsing, and it might happen very quickly that we are able to implement these restorative things in this context of vitrification and cryogenics. And that's a very exciting prospect. And that prospect is always increasing, particularly as more people are taking an interest in techno progress and in this particular issue. So read up on the subject, and then pick up Rudi's book, and start making these kinds of choices for your future. You describe this as a time machine to the future, and describing what it would be like to have this experience of waking up sometime later in a changed world. Let's talk about that. What is your vision of the future, and of people's experience in this waking up in this very, very different world?
Oh, wow. That is an interesting idea. Certainly, the cool thing about cryonics is if it does work, the amount of time, it'd be like going to sleep tonight and waking up in this truly remarkable future. And by definition, any technology and society that can bring us back from cryonic temperature, basically fix the damage caused by the process itself as well as what you died of, is a pretty advanced technology. These folks have probably figured out advanced individual molecular machines that have inferred where things to be in ourselves, and importantly, we would not necessarily come back in the old worn-out body that you went in. That's one of the many misconceptions of cryonics, because people say, "Hey, I die. I'm going to typically die when I'm pretty old, and I don't want to come back as some 98-year-old geezer." That doesn't sound like much fun. Well, no, I think that the idea behind cryonics is that any technology that can bring us back can also almost certainly bring us back in an optimized state. And I think it's optimized not just physically, but more importantly, optimized mentally and emotionally. Let's take a look at the mood-enhancing drugs and chemicals available to now, which are starting to get better, but they're still crude approximations of what the kind of drugs that can enhance the human experience. Imagine feeling the way you felt the best day of your life, Ben, when everything absolutely worked, when your brain is right, your neurochemistry is absolutely right, your body just feels glowing with good health. And that, to me, is obviously it's possible, because we know we've all experienced moments like that. The trouble is most of us don't stay that state very often. But since we know it's a neurochemical state that is fixable and attenuatable, it makes sense that a future technology will be able to bring us back in basically a state that I will call varying degrees of bliss. And how fun! So that may sound like techno-utopianism to you, but our listeners probably are techno-utopians. We believe in the ability of technology to solve human problems, perhaps not every problem, but certainly a whole bunch of them. And so the future that we'd be come back in would be, first of all, highly abundant. This is abundant. You may have read Eric Drexler's original book, the basically Engines of Creation in 1986, I think. 30 years later, he wrote Radical Abundance, which is, what nanotech could do for humanity of absolute radical abundance. You and I are currently talking on a piece of technology that would be science fiction not too many decades ago. And we're talking, it's not just rich dudes. We're talking on this base, this technology for something like free.
Mm-hmm.
The real
Five and a
live
half
video.
billion people
Yeah,
are
yeah,
doing the same.
yeah, exactly. So, so basically the dreams of humanity to have godlike powers are not speculative. It's already happening now.
Mm. And
So if we extrapolate that, it's going to be pretty amazing. So that's why the dream of Cryonics is to have a future that would be absolutely spectacular.
mm, yes, and you said, and you mentioned, and that you have been working in this field for 25 years. So we should thank you for having the insight to anticipate a time when, because not everyone did at that time. People were more skeptical at that time than they are today. These ideas of life extension in general were less mainstream. Now we have, George Church just a few days ago published an article that described a number of proteins and gene alterations toward precisely what you were talking about, maintaining health and youthful qualities, and essentially longevity escape velocity,
Right.
not just reversing aging entirely, and giving people the kind of quality of life in that condition that they would expect. Not something from Jonathan Swift, where we have a sort of a lot of, where we all become a lot of potted plants. Something.
Right. There is still a certain number of people out there who have what I would call a Frankensteinian complex. They basically, every time they think about technology, they think, well, it's going to go bad, it's going to go wrong, we're going to slop it up. Basically, we all know that technology is a two-edged sword, but the reality is that most technology works pretty well for most people. So far we've not blown ourselves up with our tech completely. Instead, human beings are thriving like never before, and I'm sure you and your listeners have read all the what I would call data-driven optimism books, things like Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now. You have great book, by the way. And we have a lot of thinkers like Ray Kurzweil, who, by the way, is signed up quietly for Cryonics. Aubrey de Grey is a loud and proud cryonicist, which I wish there was more people who are actually out of the closet as being a cryonicist. Eric Drexler is signed up for Cryonics. So, these are thought leaders. I would like more thought leaders. I would like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Carl Sagan. It's too late for Carl. Carl is officially dead. But there's a whole lot of thought leaders out there that would be well served, at least consider signing up because of the upside potential.
Yes, and you mentioned Aubrey de Grey, who's someone like yourself who's been advocating for this for a long time, advocating for life extension interventions of various kinds through the SENS Foundation, which has in recent years received a lot more publicity and funding, as people are realizing that this is actually a realistic prospect of all of these technologies that will allow us to achieve longevity escape velocity. And it's something that I try to talk to people about every day, because I think the more people who are talking about this, the more likely we are as a society to benefit from this in the most robust ways. And Aubrey de Grey, he has his reputation is incredible in this work towards ending cell death, and like you said, he's very proud in embracing companies like Alcor and these services, and rightly so. Um,
What's especially intriguing because Aubrey is pretty circumspect about any kind of interventions at work now.
mm,
Unlike Ray Kurzweil, who happily pops 250 pills a day,
mm,
Aubrey's, I believe, still says there's not really any kind of clear interventions that are age attenuating right now.
mm.
That may have been changed, but by the way, a lot of these guys are going to be at the Rad Fest. And I want to make sure that your listeners, I'm sure they are aware of the Rad Fest. It's a mixed bag. There's no doubt about it. It's not a perfect operation. There's a few flaky folks there. There's a few folks that might be, you might not necessarily agree with everything that happens at the Rad Fest, but it's a tremendous opportunity for people of all stripes who simply believe it'd be great if we could have long health for a long, long time, and they're all together in a big tent. And so it's the idea being it's a big tent mentality. Jim Stroll and Bill Falloon of the Life Extension and People Unlimited, respectively, have pulled together a pretty amazing program. I'm going to be speaking this year at the Rad Fest about cryonics. The first time cryonics has ever been on the program.
mm. Right.
And so I would encourage your listeners to hop on radfest.com or .org and check out the Rad. Between now and August 5th, there's still reduced rates. If they put RUDI in capital letters, that's another 15% off their registration.
Nice.
So anyway, it's something that I'm sending out a promotional email to my 1,500 or so Cryonics clients, encouraging them, and a bunch of them are going to be at the Rad Fest.
And so, just to be clear, that there's a promotional offer where you can get 15% off the registration at Radfest by giving a shout out to Rudi, RUDI. In that promotional coupon.
That's correct. Those are, I believe that's, I'm not sure it's case sensitive, but I think capital RUDI is the best way to go.
Okay, nice. And we were talking about some different ideas about a life extension and how that's evolved. We're moving towards cell death. We have better and better approaches to vitrification. We're getting close to having the kind of technology for this kind of reanimation that we want to see as soon as possible, and that is a force of societal factors. So it's good that we're talking about this. The Transhumanist Party itself will be making an appearance. The candidate will be making an appearance at Radfest, so people are already looking forward to that as well. So there's a lot of cooperation with these organizations. I went and spoke at the Radfest affiliated organization, People Unlimited, the Sunday before last. And
wow, that must have been great. I was privileged to speak there as well. It's an incredibly fun group to talk with, aren't they? That's an enthusiastic group. They stayed up and holler and cheer.
Oh yeah. It was so exciting that I was kind of thanking them for having this belief in these technologies now that they're moving into the mainstream in no small part because of these people's efforts. And they just cheered. I said, we should have a People Unlimited chapter in every major city in the United States. And they were very excited.
Oh yeah, that is a brilliant idea. I love that, and I'm delighted that you and a lot of transhumanists will be at the Rad Fest. I heard, I believe, was it Gennady speak at one of the previous ones, and he was so crisp, and the ideas made so much sense. I think your listeners would surely resonate, of course, with the basic transhumanist principles. And it seems to me that they ought to be mainstreamed, and increasingly, I think they are.
Yeah. And there are limitations in people's minds. Self-defeating thoughts on these. We mentioned Aubrey de Grey. Aubrey de Grey mentions this deathist mentality. The pro-aging trance is a term that he uses to describe these people who have these fatalistic notions, and they're tied to some powerful sentiments about human beings. But those things are not those things are not a law of nature. You know, we're seeing all of these breakthroughs every day with ending cell death and with interventions for longer lives. You know, in laboratories, other mammals are living 6 and 8 times longer than they would have, small mammals, because of a series of interventions. And
Yeah,
some of
great
those
point.
and some of those interventions are things like caloric restriction. Some of those are things that are more in the sort of George Church vein. And so we're always making those kind of steps. And it would just be such a tragedy if our society was not prepared to accept these things, and these things were to fall by the wayside or become orphan technologies. So we need to be touting these kinds of technologies and talking about practical implementations for these things, like you're doing with helping people find their way to this technology through this life insurance funding.
Yes. Thank you. And as we close here, I did want to close with the idea, and I agree completely with everything that we've been discussing here. And so it's almost certain that we are among the last generation that will have to die. I mean, we're moving
Mm,
toward a situation where death, and maybe aging will be voluntary. And how
mm,
sad would it be to miss this thing just by a little bit? And so that
perfect.
is in closing here, what I want to do is encourage people to research cryonics, research, uh, spend $6 and get the Kindle download of the Affordable Immortal, or spend $13 and
Do it now.
get the paperback,
Mm,
and basically do your own homework. We want people to do as much homework as they can. Go on the Cryonics organization's websites, talk to some people, and find out if this would be a technology that can make sense and be affordable for you.
mm,
Uh, so to reach across, the technology, what we're talking about is taking what's in my heart and what's in your heart, taking these tremendous ideas and sharing them in a way that literally can maybe make the difference between living and not living. This
mm,
is life and death stuff, folks. It's about as important, about as serious as it gets.
mm.
And so I encourage people who are serious about anti-aging, serious about the future, serious about seeing great, incredible technologies and what they'll do for humanity, to check out Cryonics, check out RudiHoffman.com. My website is a bunch of Q&A and some really cool videos,
Mm.
and see if this might be a fit. If it is, that's fine. If not, that's okay as well.
Yes. And people really need to keep an open mind, because this technology is evolving with every passing year. And so more and more people will be able to afford this. The price points keep coming down, coming down. And this is something that people can be doing now by picking up your book, by reaching out to another life extensionist, by just typing Alcor into Google, by typing Rudi Hoffman into Google, and getting that book from Amazon or the other
Or Kindle
places.
Downloads, absolutely.
Yes, yes, Kindle.
Hey, Ben, you are doing incredibly important work. I acknowledge and appreciate you, and and anybody who is basically an activist in the transhumanist community. It's basically we had a thing called the Enlightenment that happened 300 or 400 years ago. Unfortunately, a lot of people did not get the memo. They've kind of missed it. And the transhumanists among us are basically at the leading, bleeding edge of folks who have Enlightenment values.
Mm,
And we wish to support those. We want to become a community. The RAD is one place to actually plug into that community. So pick up, basically when you do that RAD, you see, hey, it's about $800 or $1,000, but that includes your dinners, that includes your hotel. Basically, it's a global package cost. So when you go on that RAD site, don't be scared when you see some numbers for on the costs. So anyway, I would love to have a chance to meet some of your listeners, and I would, when if you come up to me at the Rad and say, yes, I listened to you on Ben Zion's podcast, I will just be thrilled. And Ben Zion, thank you so much for having me on. I do need to go. Ironically, I have people who are waiting at 3 who are going to be signing up for Cryonics, and
Excellent.
they're doing it through life insurance. So this is where we're going to move toward to see talking to them. Thank you again for
Excellent.
having me on.
Thank you so much, Rudy. People really looking forward to reading this book, and thank you for continuing your good work even on this very day. Thank
You're
you
a
again,
good
sir.
man. Take care. Bye, everybody.